Good morning, 7th graders. It's me, Mr. Stark, and it is Tuesday, January 19th, and we are back in person learning, and I'm quite happy about it. So, welcome back, and I hope that you are um, ready to be here after 2 months away to be able to see your friends and be able to do some in person learning. So, um, glad to have you back. Good job. Today we have a couple of objectives or two things on the agenda. First of all, we've been away and there's been quite a bit of students or people that have some missing work. So we're going to take a little bit of time each of these next 3 days to try to work on some of our missing work and plus also just do a minimal lesson for the day. So one of the things that you really need to take care of is that to make sure that you've got your missing work done before the 21st, which is the end of the second quarter. The second thing that on the agenda is going to be for you to make a climate foldable about the 4 factors that influence climate. I'm going to open that up and I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and we'll go from there. Okay, so as you can see, this is a little note foldable thing that I put together and made about the factors that determine climate. Climate is the weather over a long period of time, over and over and over. So it's weather over a long period of time, maybe 30, 40 years. The climate in the Little Falls area over the last 10 to 15 years has been gradually warming, and globally it's been warming everywhere. So one of the factors that influences climate is temperature. Temperature is controlled by the sun. The sun supplies energy to the earth for photosynthesis and for our planet to get heat, to stay, so water on our planet can stay liquid, and that we can be a viable planet for living things. Temperature is a rather important thing for all the organisms that live on the planet Earth. It controls the types of organisms that can live in a particular climate or an ecosystem. So one example of an organism that is controlled by the temperature is the polar bear. Polar bears over the last 15 to 20 years have been losing critical ice habitat due to global warming. Polar bears, one of the things that they need to do is every year they wait on the shores of the Hudson Bay, and they wait for ice to form so that they can go out on the ice and hunt for seals. This is very important for their health and for the population of polar bears, because polar bears spend their time roaming around looking for food, and one big time during the year is when ice forms, that they get this huge influx of quality food, and that is they're able to go out on the ice and hunt for seals. Seals are their natural food that they've been using to improve their health, and then once their health is improved, they will take their focus and move it over into mating, and then that continues to ensure that the population of polar bears is going to go on for some time. But one thing that has happened over the last 15 to 20 years with the global warming is that ice, the formation of the ice, happens at a later and later date, and it melts at an earlier date, and therefore the time that the bears can spend on the ice actually hunting and improving their health is condensed, and it's limited. So that time, the temperature is one of those abiotic factors that would definitely have an impact on the polar bear. The next factor that influences climate is going to be latitude. Latitude is the distance away from the equator. Our planet is tilted, and therefore at different times of the year, different portions of the globe get more and more energy from the sun. Typically along the equator, most portions of the globe, or most pieces of land that are along the equator, receive somewhere between 12 and 14 hours of daylight pretty consistently. But as you go farther north or south, depending on the time of the year, that can influence the length of time that the sun actually strikes the earth. So in the northern hemisphere, when we are actually tilted towards the sun, that would be our summer, and that can improve the length of daylight up to like 20 to 22 hours of daylight, depending on how far north you go. So Alaska in the summer gets like 22 hours of daylight, but in the winter they get like maybe 2 hours of dusk, and then it's completely dark for 22 hours. So that is all created by the tilt of the Earth. So in conclusion there with that latitude is that the pole areas get less energy because of they don't get very direct sunlight. The equator areas get more energy, they get more direct sunlight, and they have a pretty consistent amount of sunlight every day. Our third factor that influences climate is what we call elevation. And so elevation is just how far above sea level you are. The higher that you go above sea level, the colder it is. Okay, and so warmer air is able to hold more moisture, more energy, and as we go higher in elevation, it's colder. Therefore, we don't have as much energy in there, and typically we end up with snow and colder temperatures. So elevation is another one that affects climate. So there are areas of the Earth where the mountains are nice and low, and things are pretty moderate, but the higher up you go, the colder it gets. And so there are actually areas in the high mountains that create desert-like conditions because it's super, super dry and cold. Our final factor is precipitation. Precipitation is the amount of moisture that falls in a particular area in a particular climate. More moisture determines that there are different types of plants that can live there. Plants that have lots of leaves in them that can draw up moisture from the ground do very well in these areas, and other areas where it's dry and arid, plants have to have different types of adaptations to conserve water. So in this situation with precipitation, we have warm air moving in off the ocean and hitting the mountains. And as the air rises and to go over the mountains, you know from the previous factor that air cools as it rises. Okay, therefore, when air cools, warm, moist air cools, the water starts to condense, and then we start going through the water cycle, and water will fall to the earth in the form of rain. So on the windward side of the mountain, as the air moves in off the ocean and rises and cools, the precipitation starts to fall depending on the elevation. That could be in the form of rain or snow, but it usually falls on the leeward side of the mountain. And then on the back side of the mountain, after all the moisture's been removed, we end up with like very dry desert-like conditions. So this happens in the United States on the Sierra Nevada mountains. Air moves in off the ocean, rain falls. On the backside, we have Death Valley. We have like areas like Las Vegas and New Mexico and that do not get a lot of precipitation. So mountains and precipitation are creating different climates on each side of the mountain. I will be going over this in class, and I probably will have a few more other things to add into it, a couple of videos and stuff to talk about the polar bears and things of that nature. So I'll be adding on to this, but what I would like you to do today is to take a piece of paper that you will get, like the printer paper, and make your own little copy of this factors that include climate. And if you want to change some of the things in it, like the different types of organisms maybe that are affected by global warming. So another one that would be is the moose in northern Minnesota. Our population of moose has dramatically dropped off in the last 10 to 15 years due to global warming. So you could put a different organism in there. You could put a different picture of the mountains. You could do a different picture to represent latitude. You can change that a little bit and make it your own. So I'd like you to make your own little diagram of factors that determine climate. But each of the factors would be temperature, latitude, precipitation, and elevation. So today is Tuesday. I'd like you to have this done by Thursday. Take your time, do a good job drawing the pictures, put some color into it. The more effort you put into it, the more learning you will do with it. So that's all for today. Have a great day, and looking forward to see you all. Bye-bye.